Hi there, I hope you're well, and today I want to talk to you about a different topic. I want to talk to you about a method, about a technique called shadowing. Yes, as a shadow. So this technique is about repeating, listening and repeating so that you can improve your pronunciation or your accent. Maybe you'd like to change your accent. So, of course, it would depend on what goal you want to achieve. So, as the name of the technique says, shadowing, you are going to be a shadow. You are going to copy everything that you hear. But of course, you're not going to start with long sentences and you are not going to do an entire paragraph at once because it's too much. The idea of practicing as a shadow is to repeat it immediately after you've heard it so that you can really copy what you just heard. So you start with words, with single words. And during class, I find it useful to use it especially for words that are hard to pronounce. And of course, some words can be a little bit tricky to pronounce to everyone, like thorough. All the words that use th can be a little bit difficult to pronounce, especially if that kind of sound is not part of your first language. And there are some other words like February that some people think that it's not so easy to pronounce. But maybe if during class I have just introduced a new word to students, I find it useful to say it a few words and then asking the students to repeat it because it helps you at least learn the proper pronunciation. So accent and pronunciation are two different things. I used to struggle with the pronunciation of the word pumpkin because I pronounced it pumpkin, like king, but there's no G in the end of the word. So pumpkin. It's tricky. It can be tricky because some words have very different pronunciations than our first languages. And let's not forget that different English-speaking countries are going to have different accents. When I went to Scotland a few years ago, I found it very hard to understand the entire conversation because the accent was really strong. I was not used to listening, to hearing that kind of accent. And of course, that if you go to America, if you go to different states in America, lots of words are going to be pronounced differently. So that's when this method, shadowing, comes into play if you would like to change your accent. Because I've received quite a few messages asking me how can people improve their accents? What can you do? So of course that if you can practice with people that have the kind of accent that you would like to have too, it becomes easier. If you are living in the country, if you are living in England or if you are living in Australia, it's easier because you listen to that accent all the time. You hear how the words are pronounced. Of course, if you pay attention, because if you move to London and you only have Brazilian friends, you might not learn that much. Your accent might not change so much. So you need to participate. You need to immerse yourself in the culture. We can use the word water as an example. So I pronounce it water. But depending on the country that the person is from, or maybe where this person has learned English, the pronunciation could be water or water. Can you spot the difference? Water, water, water. And technically, they are all correct because now we are not talking just about pronunciation, we are talking about accent. So if you ask me, could I say any of them? If you could use any of these pronunciations? Yes, because they are all correct. So now you might be thinking, how do I choose? How do I choose the audio or the video that I'm going to do this shadowing work? Well, that depends. Depends on your goal. What do you want to achieve? Do you want to move to a different country? Or maybe you work in a company that does a lot of work with a company from America, or maybe a company from Australia. So you need to communicate with those people better, and you'd like to understand their accent better, and you would also like to speak in a way that sounds more similar to theirs. So now you really have to ask yourself, how would you like to sound like? So after you've decided that, it's time to get to work. So you might be thinking, how do I do it? Where do I start? So if you struggle with pronunciation, that's what you want to learn first. Start with single words. So you can use Google Translator, for example, or you can type the word and write pronunciation, or better say, you can type pronunciation right next to it, and you are going to find videos with someone pronouncing it. So you can always add your preferred type of pronunciation. So you can add British pronunciation or American pronunciation, and you can listen to how the word is pronounced and repeat it immediately. Do it a few times, especially if it's a word that you've been struggling with, it's going to help. After you've done that, you can move to sentences. So to do this with sentences so that it doesn't get too boring, you can choose a show, maybe a comedy show if you want to practice day-to-day life, or you can listen to a podcast and pause it. Listen to a sentence and pause it and repeat it, because you shouldn't wait too long. You should not listen to an entire conversation or to a 5-minute conversation and then try to repeat it, because it doesn't work. Unless you have absolutely fantastic memory, then you can do it. Otherwise, start with sentences, with words, then sentences. And a podcast, I would say a podcast, because these days you can find so many different ones and topics about pretty much everything. So it's a fun way to do it. Now, maybe you've tried everything. You picked your podcast, or maybe you've chosen a piece of a movie or your favorite show, and you did it. You listened to it and you repeated it. But maybe you didn't feel like it was great. You didn't feel an improvement. You might feel like it was good, because some people find it very efficient, but some people don't. And I would say it is because this technique is not a one-size-fits-all. In case you haven't heard this expression, it means the way I'm using it. I'm saying it's not a one-size-fits-all. It doesn't work for everyone. So some people might find it really useful, but depending on the situation, it might not help you the way that you want it. So for single words, I thought it was efficient. When I had issues with pronouncing one specific word, I thought it was useful. But an entire sentence, it's useful if you really don't have anyone to practice with, because you might not have that person, have a friend, or the opportunity to practice with someone. So of course this is better than not practicing, because you are going to be listening to how the word, how everything is correctly pronounced. So of course it helps. But personally, remember, I'm speaking out of experience at this moment, I think it's better to actually practice, to speak with someone instead of just listening. So I think it's better if you can consume content, for sure. Maybe the kind of bands, the kind of music that you consume, you can choose a band from the country you are planning to move to. you know. So if you want to move to England, maybe choose a British band and start to consume more of their music. It definitely helps. But if you have the opportunity to talk to someone, to listen to what they are saying and not to just repeat, you are going to repeat that word later on because you are going to use that word again. But you know, an actual conversation, I think it's more useful and I would prefer it if I could choose it. But if you feel like it helps you, shadowing helps you, because maybe you prefer to study by yourself. Some people prefer it this way, and that's okay. So I'm just talking about one technique that could help you, you know, in case you don't have someone to practice with. This could be a good technique for you. So give it a try, and you know, again, I know I've said it before, but don't choose something extremely hard to start with. You know, maybe picking a podcast about psychology and the study of specific parts of the brain, something that's going to have different terms that are going to be really hard to pronounce. So go with something that you feel comfortable with first, and then of course move on to something that challenges you. So yeah, I hope this helps you.